So my name is John. I'm a physical therapist here at PT Concepts. I've been a PT for about 12, almost 13 years now. I've been in multiple settings, from hospitals to outpatient, and being a partner in a group here in this private practice is where I found my true calling.
Yeah. My name is Corey Penfold. I'm an athletic trainer. I've been here for almost 7 years now. And yeah, started with just kind of primarily patient care, and over time kind of worked a lot on some of the marketing and, personnel side, and, so here we are.
So for me, it was a calling. I never had parents that were in the medical industry. I'd never used PT myself. To be honest, when I wanted to do PT, I wasn't really sure what physiotherapy really included.
Yeah.
But I've always liked helping people. I always liked solving problems. I wanted to be the person that people would go to for a solution. And so I was pretty good at math and science, and it was kind of an easy way for me to stay involved with sports, athletics, physical well-being, and solving those problems.
Yeah, I think for a lot of us, like getting into just kind of physical therapy, sports medicine, that sort of realm, a lot of it does tie back to some type of desire to help people, I think, right? But also even just your experience as an athlete too. So that was for me. I knew in high school I wasn't gonna go pro, and so I wanted to find another way to kind of still be around sports. So that's what kind of led me to this. And I think it's interesting. I think for most physical therapists, chiropractors, whatever, it's a similar answer. A lot of people had an experience with an injury where they loved what they did, and they're trying to figure out what they want to do with their life, so it ends up being a natural fit. And but with that, it's competitive. It's getting a lot tougher.
It's not easy to go through the process, right? And I think it is exactly that. It's a very stepwise. It's a very long duration, and it's not easy. So those that can make it, I think they tend to do really well. And like you said, having the background in the area of body movement through sports, and then the desire to help is a huge key.
Man, I think this is such an interesting thing because we get the opportunity to do a lot of the hiring for a lot of our clinicians here. I think the biggest thing is understanding that and I don't know whether it's school doesn't do a good job, or it's just kind of the healthcare industry is what it is. It is a business, but kind of that balance between the actual patient care and the actual business side of it. And I think a lot of people have this mindset that those are on opposite ends of the spectrum, and they can't be, So at the end of the day, you can be the best clinician there is, but if you can't pay your rent, pay your staff, and keep your doors open, then you're not going to be much help to people. And so I think that's my biggest thing is for if you're newer in the industry, kind of understanding that unfortunately there is a business aspect to this that, again, you got to be able to keep your doors open. And that can be really tough for people because, again, most of us get into this because we want to help people. And so we don't want to think about the money and all that, but again, it does matter. So I do think there's kind of a good mesh in that, and sometimes that just takes a team that can put that together, or but as a new grad and a newer person in the industry, I think it's important to just understand that aspect of it.
Sure, and the volume does drive the clinic success, and the clinic success allows us to hire people to be put into that position. And so a lot of new grads come out thinking, I want to see one person an hour. Well, when you do the math, it doesn't really equate into profitability to keep the business running in order to actually employ you for that salary you're looking for. I think the other topic of what I want people to understand is, I'll use the phrase, the work is never done, right? When I'm done with a patient, I still go home and I think about, what did I do? Was that the right thing? Do I need to do different? There's still stuff to work on through your outside of work opportunities to better yourself for the patients that stay with you. Now, depending on the setting, I've been in multiple settings, and in this setting, a patient might be with you for 12 visits, maybe longer. And you want to make sure you're getting the right response out of that patient. And so, like I said, I don't stop thinking about that patient until they've finally met their goals and they're done with PT.
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of the difficulty of running the business kind of again goes back to just the fact that you do have to run a business, and it is healthcare, and you're here to help people, and that is number one. You know, I think in general, like when that is number one, and you're really good at that, you're gonna do okay, you know. But there's still a balancing act that needs to happen between those two sides, and I do think one of the biggest challenges is always just not so much the patient care, but the people within the business, and kind of rowing the same direction as a team, you know, keeping people happy, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of work that goes into that. And unfortunately, sometimes decisions have to be made where not everyone's happy with it. But, you know, sometimes people, even we don't always have the full picture of everything. So that's just sometimes a difficult thing.
Right, and I think when you keep in mind the patient and the focus of what we do is for the patient, and trying to pick the right personnel that have that same feeling. So when you see PT, right, the physical therapist, the tech, the people actually doing the treatment are different than the people that are doing the scheduling, that are doing the billing. And
the
so
insurances and everything.
Getting someone to understand how that patient goes through the whole process, you got to pick the right people to be put in those positions in order for that success to kind of show through. And you know, over the years we've had good, we've had bad, and it's been a tailored program to find the right person, and it's the people.
It's definitely a team
difficult
approach, and you know, just like any team, I think kind of getting everyone to work together. You know, a really interesting analogy is I think a lot of times companies, and I feel like, I mean, we've even done it, talk about, you know, the team and everything as a family. And I heard a quote that was basically like a better way to maybe approach that is to approach it as a professional sports team. And it's like, man, if you think about it that way, like, yeah, I want people who are really good at what they do at all these different positions, and I want those people to care about what they do and find value in that, but also look to improve so we can do a better job collectively. And you know, sometimes that's really tough to get everyone on the same page and row in the same direction.
I think that go a few ways. You know, to me, when I have a patient come in and they act like they're surprised they're actually getting better, that to me is a high five in my opinion. The other things I look for is, are they so happy that they come back after a new injury? Are they referring a family member while they're still here? Are they working to explain to their doctor, like, this was the greatest place you sent me. I'm so thankful that this is where I'm getting treated. And now that doctor comes back and, you know, sends more people based on those responses.
100%, yeah. Yeah, I think something we say a lot, I mean, internally is like, your goals are our goals. And so that's always kind of my goal is like, you know, the thing I hate is whenever a patient comes in and they're like, man, I was told by this provider, this clinician, whatever, that I'm never gonna be able to run again. But I love to run, like that's my escape, that's my, you know, favorite thing to do. So like I hate hearing that stuff, and it's like, well, if your goal is to get back to running, I mean, like, why don't we do everything that we possibly can to get you back to running? So I think that's really what defines success is, like you said, getting that surprise maybe. Sometimes it's a surprise, but just that reaction from the patient. It's like, man, I was not sure I was ever going to get to do this again, and now I am. And that's the best. Yeah. Whatever that goal is. So, yeah.
Is there a patient success story you'd like to share?
There's many, I think, that we could go through.
Yeah, there's
short and sweet. I always tell patients this one. I had a patient, 2 years worth of pain. The day they came in, they weren't, I don't think, expecting much. They had an MRI scheduled the next day. They were ready to have surgery. After my exam, I realized what I thought the issue was, and I corrected that, and instantly there was tears. And I was almost taken aback at first. I was like, did I just do something wrong? And so I asked this patient, I says, you know, why are you crying? And they're like, I've waited 2 years for this moment, and my pain is absolutely gone. I don't even think I need an MRI tomorrow. I wish I would have been here 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's moments like that where you're like, you know, not always are we a big significant part. Like, we're not a surgery, right? We're not a life-threatening or life-saving service. But in those moments, I gave her life back. She got everything she wanted in that moment.
Yeah,
so.
That's huge. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree. There's a lot of stories of that, but one big one for me is probably about 5 years ago. This was before COVID, And I had a patient who he had his own online personal training business, and so he had some pretty significant tearing in his rotator cuff. And obviously, as a personal trainer, like one, you need to look the part and walk the walk in terms of what you do for clients, but also that's his business, to be able to demonstrate these movements and help clients through that kind of stuff. And so, he really had a lot of limitations with that shoulder, and he was honestly a really good candidate for surgery, but he really didn't want to do surgery. So we were able to kind of work through and get him back to pretty much 100%. I actually think that shoulder ended up being better off than the other one. Yeah, and so it took probably 5-6 months of consistent physical therapy, but I think as he saw the progress, like he kind of just had a little bit more positivity and more openness, and I think that probably increased some of the healing and his ability to get better. So that was a big one, because not only is it, hey, I'm having this pain and it's limiting my life, but it's limiting his business, his ability to provide for his family. So that was a huge one.
That's awesome.
Okay, and then I guess kind of piggybacking onto that, what would you say to someone who doesn't even want to be sent to physical therapy, or they're on the fence about it?
Yeah, I mean, it does happen. Like sometimes an MD will refer a patient in and they really don't want to be here, and so I think for me, it's just kind of like us sitting down and trying to, that's where you kind of, I'm an athletic trainer obviously, but like you kind of become a therapist in a sense, and just trying to understand, hey, like what are some of those underlying reasons why they're hesitant or why they don't want to be here, and seeing if you can find ways to break through some of that, and maybe that's changing some of the beliefs that they have, or just showing them a different way of viewing something. But yeah,
I always use an analogy in that situation. Like you said, a doctor will send someone in 2 to 3 times a week. Patient says, I'm not going to do it that much. Well, I still need you to do it at home as well. Well, I'm not going to. And so I always use the analogy of eating. Most people eat 3 times a day. Why do you eat 3 times a day? Because your body's asking for something. It's telling you you're hungry, so you satisfy that hunger through eating. Well, in this scenario, your body's telling you something through a symptom. Maybe it's pain, maybe it's a lack of motion or strength. And the only way to get through that is to give it what it needs, which is the exercise, the movement, and the things that we're teaching you. And you got to do it multiple times a day until that satisfies that request your body's asking for.
Yeah, that's good. And sometimes it's just difficult. You got to change habits. That's tough for anyone. I mean, what if they say January 19th, I think, is National Quick Day, because everyone has all these goals beginning of the year that they fall off on, and that's all of us in some way. So, I think that's the other part of it, is like we're all human, we are too, and we all have our stuff that we struggle with, but, seeing the value and just kind of like coming here and being consistent, and you do see those changes over time. It goes a long way. I think my biggest one is just that it's just miserable workout. I mean, whether that's like, oh, I don't want to go there and sweat, or that's one I've heard plenty, or even just like, I know it's going to be painful or whatever, and it's just like, well, again, we are trying to create some change, whether that's with the tissues, whether that's with some of your mindset and how you're approaching things in life, but that can be difficult. But I would say that, I mean, everyone's different, so what your prior experiences, maybe at a different place or with a different injury, it's probably going to be different than what you are going through here and today. But yeah, I mean, just it can look different for different things and for different people. So
yeah, kind of similar thought process. There's 2 things that come to mind to me. First one is, a lot of patients say, why can't I just go to the gym and do these things? Well, if you could go to the gym and do these things, you wouldn't be here today asking me how to fix these things. So PT is not the weightlifting that you're doing at the gym. It's corrective exercises. It's getting a tissue to work in the right timing with another tissue to allow the joint or the mechanic to be done symmetrically to reduce that pain or symptom. The other misconception I think with PT is it's just exercise. There's a lot of hands-on soft tissue manipulation and mobilizations. It's not quite spa massage, but we are working with our hands, giving a personal touch in order to kind of feel what that body's feedback is with what we're doing. So it's not just straight, moving weights. So thank you for your time. Again, my name is John Story. I'm a physical therapist.
My name is Corey Penfold. I'm an athletic trainer. Thanks for watching our video with PT Concepts. Movement is medicine, so I hope you get the chance to get out and move today.